Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals, I'm your host Hannah, and this is Under the Scrubs. Alright, this feels weird. I'm doing back-to-back recordings in a sitting, but I do it for my people. I do it for my listeners. That being said, we are going out of town for my brother's wedding the weekend after we move, so I will not be having a new episode out October 7th on that Tuesday. You can absolutely 100% blame him. Hit me up if you want his contact info to file a complaint. That's fine. But we will be back the next week to bless your ears with the bullshit that comes from my mouth. So, might be a quick episode today. I don't know. I feel like anytime I say that, they're still like 20 to 30 minutes long, so I'm never confident. Today we're just going to talk about some weird shit that we did back in the day. I feel like it'd kind of be a fun light episode. These are like remedies for ailments that, definitely are not a thing anymore. Weird things we tried to do, but turns out wasn't great for you. Like back in the day when we just, used to do Coke for common colds or whatever. We should bring that back. I'll just jump into a quick little timeout. So I have taken this position of leadership, right? And it's kind of crazy to me because we're all adults, right? Everybody in my clinic, they're all adults. They're all old enough to drink. But then the way they be acting, it's kind of crazy to me to like talk to some people and be like, hey, these are the rules. And then you'll announce them in huddle. You'll email them out. You'll talk to people. You go, hey, these are the rules. And they go, And then they just do the opposite, or they just like totally ignore it. And you're like, hey, do you need hearing aids, or do you need some of my Vyvanse? I'm not tracking why you've been talked to about certain issues, but you still do it. I don't think it's I don't know. And okay, this is what's crazy, right? I don't think it's hard to be on time. Okay. And this is coming from somebody who used to take an antidepressant that made them super, super duper sleepy. And I quote from the neurologist that I was seeing, whoever prescribed that to you might hate you because he's like, I would never prescribe it to anybody because it makes you super sleepy and it makes you gain weight, right? So I used to take that antidepressant. It's Paxil or paroxetine. Awful. Do not recommend. And I'd be super sleepy and but I still came in on time and even working night shift. I'd make sure that I got up in time and or go to bed a little bit earlier, whatever, right? You still get people that I've talked to them multiple times and I'm like, hey, why are you coming in at 7:15? You're supposed to be here at 7. At that point, it's like, buddy, just wake up 15 minutes early. I mean, it's not like it's going to change anything. I used to have to put my phone as my alarm. I used to have to put it across the room, so I had to get my ass out of bed to physically go grab it. And at that point, well, I'm up. I might as well just go, right? So I'm listening to this book called The Courage to Be Disliked, right? And it's kind of interesting because he talks about how you can change. It's just people often don't want to, or they're afraid that to try it because of failure or whatever. But we can change. I've listened to a book, You Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I highly recommend that. If you are wanting to make some kind of change in your life, I highly recommend listening to it because it's kind of a no bullshit. You're the one that's in charge of your mind. You can't just be like, I just can't do it. No, you can. It's as simple as changing your mindset and being okay, I'm going to get back into the gym, right? I kept telling myself I'm going to get back in. I'm going to get back working out. Okay. I literally was I have to stop being a fat, lazy piece of shit and I have to get back into the gym. And guess what? I had surgery last year on my foot. It's been, over a month now, and I've lost 42 pounds. Okay. That's great. It's all about, adjustment of your mindset. Okay. So it just drives me crazy that and the things that I want to do, I think are very, two correct actions. I want to be a cool boss. I want to be laid back, but when I have to put my serious hat on, it pisses me off because I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person. I just want to know, do I always have to do things the HR way, right? Okay, you want to come in late, you're 5 minutes late. I want you to do 5 laps around the clinic. Let's go, knees to chest. I've got a 45-pound plate that you now have to hold above your head and do 5 laps. Is that an HR violation? Or hear me out, am I just contributing to lowering insurance costs? right? Like, can I start making people do push-ups or wall sits or like something where I'm like, I don't know, like you're just like, you're pissing me off. Like, why can't you be productive? Why can't you just stay on task? Do we all need Vyvanse? Like, I got a guy, he's a doctor, he'll prescribe it. He's real legit. He's my primary, so shout out to him. But I'm like, I just like, I don't know, what's wrong with people? And I'm like, the crazy thing is you drove yourself to work. You drove yourself to work. You got yourself dressed and like you drove here. And then all of a sudden you want to act like a child. Like, I don't know. To me, that's just crazy. That's craziness. All right. Resources for today's episode is science.org, Pharmacy Times, Library of Congress, Primitive Physics by John Wesley, and Ancient War History. So the first thing that I guess we used to do back in the day, milk transfusions, right? And this was the late 19th century. Did you ever need a blood transfusion and there just wasn't any? Well, fear not. Let me go milk a cow real quick and replace your blood with that. It was believed to be the perfect substitute for blood, and the fatty, oily qualities would, become white blood cells, I guess. Now, there actually was a few instances of the procedure that were successful, but pretty much all of them were like not great. But there was a couple, right? There was a couple good ones. One patient actually went into asystole when they were starting to be injected, and then they were resuscitated with a combo of morphine and whiskey, which I'm pretty sure would wake me back up too. They only survived though 10 days after the operation, so like still low-key not great. In the 19th century, Theodore Gaylord Thomas, he enjoyed an unusual level of fame for gynecology. He was most outspoken for using milk as a blood substitute from 1873 to 1880, when the idea was really just being tested. So severe bleeding back then was often a death sentence. Blood transfusions, they did happen, but we didn't have the knowledge that we do now. So like they didn't type in screen. So you get people that are getting A blood and they're just shit like that. So complications were pretty much the norm, or transfusion reactions that kind of led to death. It's the norm. In 1875, Thomas was so convinced that milk was the fix-all that he had injected 175 mils of cow's milk into a woman that was suffering from uterine bleeding post-operative when they removed some cancerous ovaries. The patient first complained of her head. She said it feels like it was going to burst. She developed a high fever and an abnormally high heart rate, but then she recovered a week later. And so Thomas subsequently performed 7 separate milk transfusions, and he published his results in several medical journals, and then he predicted their brilliant and useful future. That's weird. But what is also weird is that there's actually a lab in Baltimore that is running testing on bunnies, and they're actually trialing a blood substitute called erythromer. So not milk, but made from recycled human hemoglobin wrapped in a membrane to mimic a tiny cell. So, hey, I mean, maybe he was onto something, but we definitely are not doing milk transfusions, and I do not recommend doing those at home. Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. Is your baby crying? Do you need it to stop? Give him a little bit of Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. It's a cure-all, right, for crying babies. It was created by Charlotte N. Winslow. She was a pediatric nurse, and it was produced in 1849 by her son-in-law, Jeremiah Curtis, and his partner, Benjamin Perkins, in Maine. And it was widely marketed in North America and actually the UK. It was known as what they called patent medication, so it was marketed in the US, but typically did not prove efficacy or safety. And it was used for babies that are crying, teething, had dysentery, or to treat diarrhea. The concoction contained 65 milligrams of morphine per ounce, as well as alcohol. 1 teaspoon had the morphine content equivalent to 20 drops of laudanum, which is an opioid tincture, and it was recommended that babies 6 months old receive no more than 2 to 3 drops of laudanum. 1 teaspoon contained enough morphine to kill an average child. Many babies went to sleep after the med and never woke up, so it was nicknamed the baby killer. The crazy thing was that it was hugely popular. In an 1868 court summary, Curtis had reported selling more than 1.5 million bottles of the remedy every year. Because many caregivers did not link the death to the syrup or may not have revealed that they were using the syrup, there's actually no official statistics on how many babies or children that died from it. Estimates, however, though, put the number at the thousands who died from overdose, addiction, or withdrawal. Over time, Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup was forced to remove the morphine from the formulation and then to also remove the word soothing. And the syrup was actually sold up until the 1930s. I guess your baby can't cry if they are DC to JC, am I right? Hay fever never stood a chance. If you used cocaine, it would alleviate your allergy symptoms caused by pollen. It was a remedy for hay fever. So the theory was that you had to get rid of the pollen irritant. You don't want to trigger the reflexes, and to affect your nasal and facial mucosa and remove any susceptibility was kind of like what the remedy was supposed to be, right? So they couldn't really find a cure until cocaine had been made known, and I quote, "Not much of a satisfactory character had been achieved, and the one remedy for the great army of sufferers." Applying cocaine just kind of seemed to be a problem solver for everything. So you would shove a tablet or a pellet of coke up your nose, and then you would hold that nostril closed until it was absorbed. Dr. George Frederick Laidlaw, he was a recognized leading pathologist of the homeopathic school in New York, was quoted multiple times saying, "If you can't cure it without cocaine, you better keep the hay fever." If you were a sufferer of joint pain, not anymore, because you can just try sitting in a dead whale. In 1896, New York Times published the whale cure that became popular after a gentleman of convivial habits had been grievously afflicted with rheumatism, and he noticed this whale carcass, right? He's out and about walking, sees it. 50-50 shot of him being drunk, but as a joke, he decided to go jump into the dead whale carcass. His friends were horrified, but because of the heat and the smell, they didn't try to stop him. It was a smart move. When he reappeared, his rheumatism, from which he had been suffering with for years, he said had magically disappeared. After that, the town of Eden, Australia, had become basically a dead whale version of a Turkish bath. If people could hold out for 30 hours, it was rumored that they could cure their condition for up to a year. So they would literally cut a hole into this dead whale and lower people inside of it so that only their head stuck out. We're not really confident if it actually ever cured anyone, but it kind of feels like the cure might seem a lot worse than the disease. John Wesley had published a book. It was a easy and natural method of curing most diseases. So these are some of his cures. If you have a nosebleed, you can put a very large hot poker up it, or you can drink whey largely every morning and eat raisins, or you can wash your temples, nose, and your neck with vinegar. Chilblains, throwback to, one of our last episodes. To prevent it, you can wear flannel socks. No shit. For a cure, it said to apply salt and onions together, which, hear me out. Okay, if you put salt on ice, it lowers the freezing point, right? But if we've learned anything from dumb internet challenges, when you mix salt and ice on the skin, it actually causes a burning sensation similar to frostbite and can actually escalate to second or third degree injuries similar to frostbite, and you aren't going to see any of that until a little bit later on. It won't be immediate. So I feel like if you've got these frozen toes, maybe not putting salt on it. I don't know. I'd be a little hesitant, but hey, you can try salt and onions together. To prevent rickets in children, you just dipped the child or the baby in cold water every morning till they are 8 or 9 months old, and then after that, just have them dip their little feet and hands into cold water. I guess after you baptize your baby every day in cold water, when they're screaming from that, you can maybe give them some of Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. If you had heart palpitations, you can be cured if you drink a pint of cold water and then apply a rag soaked in vinegar to your body, and it will electrify you. Toothaches? Not anymore, baby. You can just cure it with electricity. You literally just got a shock for toothache because, nothing ever went wrong with a little shock to the body. The last one that I will cover is a good old-fashioned bloodletting. Hippocrates proposed the theory of 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Diseases were caused by imbalance of the bodily fluids, and to restore that balance, you need to, that's right, drain the excess humors by bleeding. George Washington actually died in 1799 after doctors bled him to the point of near death. They had drained 2.5 liters or 2,500 milliliters from his weakened body, which really contributed to his demise. King Charles II of England did bloodletting, and it was after a stroke. And when it didn't work, the doctors just kept going in with enemas and other weird medieval remedies until he died. Lord Byron, who was a famous poet, he was killed by bloodletting after a fever. Multiple rounds of bloodletting left him obviously a lot weaker, which inevitably led to his death. Mozart struggled with illnesses and was bled so many times that in his final days, that's more than likely what really contributed to his death at 35. Bloodletting actually hung around for centuries and really refused to die off until the 19th century when we discovered germs and the true causes of diseases, and that really shooketh the black science down to its foundation. So you'd either like cut a vein and just let that bad boy bleed, or you would place heated cups on the skin to kind of create a vacuum and draw blood out, or just flat out you'd use leeches. And I mean, in a way, technically we still do it, but we call it therapeutic phlebotomy, or I guess you can still use leeches. If you have an excess of iron or red blood cells, that's actually the treatment for it is therapeutic phlebotomy, or basically bloodletting. So a while ago when I did some plastic surgery episode, I talked about a plastic surgeon, Ben Brown. So I do have an update on the Dr. Ben Brown and Hillary Brown case, where the plastic surgeon he was doing procedures on his wife, and it's very clear that she was suffering from a lidocaine overdose. She had a seizure. She essentially coded in the chair, and he kind of put it off, right? And she ended up dying. Ben Brown had his hearing recently, like within the last week or two, and he gave his testimony. The defense is saying that he did not give his wife too much lidocaine during the procedure when she coded, and that having his unlicensed wife work laser equipment was appropriate because she had training to use it. The state had pointed out that the defense's opinions were mostly based on Brown's notes and testimony. They included testimony from a plastic surgeon that was called in by the Florida Department of Health attorneys, who said, in his opinion, that Brown did not follow basic medical protocol in his care of Hillary. The Florida Department of Health alleges that there are several accusations, including that Brown did not follow proper medical protocol when he failed to immediately call 911 or have life-saving equipment on hand when his wife stopped breathing and coded at his office due to what appeared to be lidocaine toxicity while he was performing several procedures. Former employees testified that Hillary had several seizures and that her husband did not immediately want to call 911 while he looked and called for medical equipment to revive her himself. Brown testified that he thought she had fainted, and that's why he did call 911 when her vitals started dropping, and that he doesn't know why she had seizures and died. He also denied any allegations by a former patient that he did an unauthorized BBL and left her dealing with necrotic wounds that had exposed muscle wall in her abdomen and required emergency surgery to correct it. That patient actually testified during the hearing, but her testimony was not open to the public or press. The Florida Department of Health wants the Florida Board of Medicine to discipline Brown, who is currently on a license restriction. Disciplinary actions range from losing his medical license to ordering additional training. The administrative judge will make recommendations to the Florida Board of Medicine based on the evidence and testimony presented, but it's the Board of Medicine that will make the final ruling, and there is no timeline for that decision to be made. I think we can thank the good Lord and scientists for bringing us up to kind of where we are today as far as getting back to the original topic of this episode. Science is under attack with an anti-intellectual movement. We just got to keep fighting it with knowledge, peer-reviewed studies, and always having like a healthy amount of like questioning or skepticism, right? You approach things with an open mind, question, try to understand. I think this is like one thing that I'm not gonna lie, that's always concerned me about having kids is like, what if I have a kid and it's stupid? Like, what if it makes friends at school and it learns like awful things and it brings it home? Like, I don't know, like racism, misogyny. I don't know, like these kids that bring home shit and they're just, and then I got to re-educate my child, or I got to claim that kid out in public. Ugh. One thing my mom like really kind of has instilled is that hatred like that's kind of taught from the high chair up. So, my friends, this is a roundabout way of saying we got to raise smart kids from the high chair up. You think that I'm not already trying to teach, or will be trying to teach my nephew once he can finally talk and understand, anatomically correct location of things? Like, that baby's going to know all of the bones of the body and where they're located. He's going to know cardiology and neurology and infection and disease and all sorts of shit better than any kid that he's going to grow up with. I know my sister and my brother-in-law are not going to let him be dumb, nor will I. And I will do the same to all of my nieces and nephews. In science we trust around this bee. My dog is even vaccinated because I can't let my poor little baby be around peasants that will get her sick with a nasty ass. So, all that to say, my guys, like I said, we're not going to have an episode essentially next week, October 7th. I'll give you my brother's contact info if you want to complain. He might not be happy about it, but he's fine. I'm the one that's marrying them, so I got to write out my script and shit and be ready and be professional again. So, we will not be back October 7th, but the following week we will be back. New episode, obviously. Don't know what I'm doing yet. I'll figure it out. So until then, I will see you guys the following Tuesday in Science We Trust. Okay, love you. Bye.